What's up, Prince? All right. So, Rizz 101. What is Rizz? So, Rizz is like an American slang word that represents how well you can like pick up girls and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be teaching you pickup lines in this course. That's Rizz 102 for the advanced learners. This is more about charisma. So Rizz comes from the word charisma, and this is essentially going to help you indirectly with picking up chicks, but it should help you all around with maintaining friendships, finding VCs, finding partners. Overall in your life, charisma helps, and we're going to just start with the foundations, but I can do a Rizz 102 on how to get girls later. So the first rule, I'm breaking the first rule of Rizz by talking about myself, but I feel like it's important to essentially explain who I am so you guys feel like you should listen to me. I was born and raised in a low-income area in Alabama. I'm with a single mom and 4 siblings, so it was a lot of struggle. I was a first-gen college student at 16 years old. I was a valedictorian of my high school and my college. I was an aerospace and mechanical engineer by degree. I consider myself a Renaissance man because I kind of dabble in everything. I built a over $1 million net worth by 27 years old without any money from anyone, no luck, no inheritance, anything like that. And I've done an extremely large amount of adventures. I mean, I've trekked through the Amazon, through the Arctic Circle, walked on the outside of airplanes, became a pilot myself, skydived, built an electric race car, raced on Formula One tracks in Europe, did an Ironman with only 4 weeks of training, so I am a Renaissance man. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my professional career. So like I said, I was an aerospace engineer by degree. I started working at Boeing when I was 18. Then I moved on to SpaceX when I was 19 years old, spent a couple years or so there, and went on to Disney as a ride engineer, then segued into tech, worked at Apple for their self-driving car project before joining a startup that was also a self-driving car project, and I went on to lead a team of 28 engineers. That company was valued at $30 billion at the peak, and we got bought by General Motors last December. So for me, what's next? Well, if I have it my way, I'll be the mayor of Huntsville, Alabama in 2028. And thank you. And this takes a lot of Rizz. So I'm going to lay down some foundations here. The reason why I said all of that stuff is because I want you guys to know, like, I'm not here to teach theory. I've honestly never read a fucking book in my life. That's a fact. So I'm just teaching what worked because I feel like my real edge wasn't intelligence or luck by any means. It's things that I built from the ground up, like confidence, charisma, and things that I'm going to explain here. I'm not just going to explain the definitions. I'm going to give you guys like real things to do in your life to develop these skills. So I want to start with what I call the 3 C's. I think there's 3 keys to having success in life, but the base level is self-awareness. Without self-awareness, you have no foundation. And this is what you look for when you're looking for a partner, when you're looking for, or whether it's a romantic partner or a business partner. This is what VCs are looking for when they want to invest in you. It's like self-awareness is the key to everything else. Once you develop this, confidence, communication, and consistency build the pyramid of success. And all of these things lead to what I think are the most important things as a human being: charisma and adaptability. So what do these really mean, and how do you build them? Well, I'm going to walk through a 5-step plan with basically this pyramid and then what those mindsets that I've developed are and what I think people should try to adopt in their own life. So I want to talk about self-awareness. That's step 1. I think in order to gain self-awareness, it starts with blameless acknowledgement. So no forgiveness and no blame for who you are, but you need to think about who you are. Well, how do you do that? Well, it's kind of obvious, but you have to think about yourself. I think you need to prioritize yourself and spend the time truly being introspective. Personally, I've driven from coast to coast in America, 9 times, which is over 25 hours. Those drives for me are therapy. I do them by myself so I can think about who I am, and I do this exercise almost every year to year and a half to stay grounded and stay self-aware. But why is this so important? So I'm going to explain like my favorite analogy that I think I've made this up. I've never seen this anywhere else. So this is Plinko. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this game, but it's a popular game where you drop a chip. It bounces around randomly. So I kind of think of life as this game of Plinko because you get dropped and no one gets to pick where they're dropped from. Where you're dropped from depends on what country you're born in, how rich your parents are, the state of the world, all of these things that you have no control over, but you're just dropped. If you remain a Plinko chip without any self-awareness, you're bouncing around randomly. You don't know where you got dropped and you really don't know where you're landing because you don't have any self-awareness. You're just going through life. Well, unfortunately for that, if you've looked into how statistics work, if you dropped 1,000 balls from the exact same point, they're going to land in this normal distribution. And all of these balls, like I said, have no self-awareness. So the reason why self-awareness is so important is because no matter where you are in your progress of life, if you take the time to figure out where was I dropped. Now, this is a 2D representation. I think in reality, this Plinko of life is really a 3D cube, and you can kind of like fill in your axes how you think makes sense. But in general, if you don't know where you're dropped, you don't know where you're most likely going. And I think that understanding where you're most likely going to land is extremely valuable. So I would say, like I said, blameless and without forgiveness, figure out where you were dropped from. Because in order to understand where you're going, you have to know where you're dropped from. Now, if you don't like where you're going, or like I think everyone in this room, we believe that we are here, or we are here, we want to be outliers, you need to be able to wiggle and bounce a slightly different direction than where you're most likely going to go. And I'm going to explain how to do this, but I want you to remember that life is full of randomness, just like this game of Plinko, but with a little bit of self-awareness, that randomness can be controlled. So that's the game of Plinko. Now I'm going to explain what I call the equation of your character. So this concept, I'm going to try to explain as best I can, but it's a little bit like hard to grasp. So I know everyone in this room have talked to their parents or old people and they're like, these motherfuckers won't change their mind. They're like set in their ways, whatever. Well, it's because over time, you can fill anything, any trait here. It can be your opinion on gun laws. It can be how cheap you are. It can be how much you love your country. It doesn't matter. Any trait, any opinion goes here. As you go through life, there's these peaks and these valleys which represent experiences. It could be anything. It could be trauma. It could be a conversation you had in the elevator. It could be a book that you've read. Certain things in life tend to bounce you around on what your opinion and your traits are. And over time, it gets harder to change these unless there's like a crazy event, like you have a child or something. But over time, it gets dampened out. So I think understanding this about yourself is so key for self-awareness because for me personally, I intentionally seek out what's the most extreme minimum and extreme maximum I can experience about a certain logic because that's going to make me the most well-rounded individual. Now, you also have to realize that as like a white guy, there's certain mins and maxes I just can't experience. And I think understanding that lets me know where my character curve is. So this is basically my ChatGPT's best representation at explaining this. But each, what is it called? Plane. Each plane is like a characteristic, a personality trait. Now there's infinite traits because we can define traits end on end. But essentially all of those traits over time create who you are as a person. Now, this is a very balanced person. Reality, this isn't how it goes. There's things that pull you slightly this way, pull you slightly this way. But understanding how your experiences in your life have created your thought process over time is important because we're not a spring and mass system. Like, we don't always have to dampen out. We can continue to create excitement in our life and continue to change the way we feel if we don't like where this curve is. But if you don't know where your curve is, then you're traveling through life with no self-awareness, and I think that that's a big mistake. So, after you get self-awareness, we need to develop confidence. Now, going back to the Plinko game, confidence really comes in when you remove your comfort zone. Think about it. If you're comfortable in every situation, then you're just way more confident in all of those situations. Uncomfortable, or whatever the word is, discomfort, is the kryptonite to being confident. Like, if think about like you go to a party and you don't know a lot of people, you're uncomfortable and now you don't get that confidence. So it's all about expanding your comfort zone. So how do you do that? Well, as you saw in the first slide, I've done a lot of really random things in my life. It's because I think doing things that are dumb or random or uncomfortable or risky all the time is the key to expanding your confidence. And I would challenge like everybody in this room to just think of like one tiny thing that is really uncomfortable for you and just do it and just do it again and just do it again until it's no longer uncomfortable, and that's how your confidence grows. And I think the reason why it's important to do these things when you retain some element of control is because you're gonna be in these uncomfortable situations without any control unintentionally. So think about it as reps. Like, if, for example, I've driven across the country for 25 hours for no fucking reason. No one asked me to do that. I wasn't in a rush. I just did it because if for some reason I'm running from zombies and I need to drive for 25 hours straight, I'm confident because I know I've done this before. But I did that knowing that I had control of the situation. I could have exited that at any point. I could have pulled over. I could have went to sleep. But if you don't put yourself in uncomfortable situations when you have control of them, you're going to get in those when you don't have control, and then you're going to be stressed, you're going to be anxious, you're going to be worried. So when you have the element of control, I can't stress this enough, do dumb shit, do random things, do uncomfortable things, because over time, you're going to get organically more confident. And that's why I know a lot of people in this room, this isn't the best crowd, everybody kind of already does this, but like solo traveling is the key to growing your confidence quickly, because you have no choice but to figure shit out. Like, nobody's there to help you. You don't even know what language things are in sometimes. And it's like, as you solo travel and you figure things out, your subconscious is like, oh man, I'm proud of you. Like, you can do this, you can do this. And your confidence grows so damn much. So I think solo traveling is like the hack to the confidence boost, but it all starts with randomness. And I want to talk about increasing the confidence in choices that you make, because I think people make choices and then they're not always confident in the choices that they make. So before I read all this stuff, basically if you look at these two options, if I said pick a card from option 1 or pick a card from option 2, which choice would you be more confident in when you pick your card? I mean, I think obviously you would be more confident in option 2 because that's the only fucking card you have. So like I have this analogy to say this. I think when people make decisions, imagine your decisions as cards on the table. You don't really know what the outcome is, so you can't flip it over, but you have all these decisions. What people tend to do is they think they pick a card, and then they kind of just slide the rest to the side of the table, and they're like, okay, I picked this card. But your brain is distracted by like, well, what was under that card? Well, what was that possibility? So for me, once you make a choice, I make a choice, and I just fucking throw the cards in the trash. There's not any other option. And my favorite thing is when people ask me, because again, I do a lot of things that don't make sense. They seem random, and they seem dumb, and people always ask me, do you think you made the best choice? My answer is always like, I know I made the best choice because that's the choice that I made. There is no longer any other choice, because your choices are now like your reality, and you need to maximize that reality rather than living in the fantasy of the cards that are on the side of the table. So I just encourage people to practice making a choice and then forgetting about any other option, because not only will that make you more successful in your choice, it will make you happier, it will make you less stressed, and it will just make you calmer about the options that you picked. So another tip about making choices is a lot of times I think we do a pretty good job at pros and cons, and then we get down to like 2 choices, and sometimes you can't pick between 2 choices. And when you have 2 paths, I think the correct answer is always choose the path that's harder in the short term, because short-term difficulty is both a huge gain in confidence, and it's a gain in your momentum, and also it's just way shittier or less shitty than long-term pain or putting off something that's harder later. So if you have 2 choices, don't think about any of the outcomes, just think about which one's harder to do now, and that's the one you should pick, because the harder stuff that's early is going to be the better choice in the long term. Okay, now we have confidence. Oh no, last thing for confidence. So this is, I think, a very important thing to understand. First of all, you got to be brave and you got to stand on business. Find the internal method that really helps you do this. So whether you like it or not, the reality is basically people are motivated by one of four things. It's an acronym called RICE. I didn't come up with this. This is like something from the CIA. But you're either motivated by reward, your ideologies, coercion, or your ego. And I think it's important to analyze yourself, like I said, self-awareness, and figure out which one of these things speaks to you. And when you understand that, you can gamify your confidence. So, for example, I have a fucking ego, and it's the one that makes me the most motivated. So I am also competitive as hell. So I use those things against myself by basically telling myself, you can't do this. And now I'm fucking competitive to prove my ego wrong, and I have to go and complete whatever I told myself I couldn't do. And it's even worse when I tell other people. Like, they say you're not supposed to tell somebody what you're gonna do because then it, sets off dopamine and now you're less likely to do it. Well, I'm powered by my ego. So when I tell, hey, Greg, I'm gonna go do this, now if I don't, even if Greg doesn't give a shit, in my head, I'm like, man, Greg's gonna think I'm a bitch if I don't go and do this. Now I have to go and do this thing. So just figure out which one of these work for you. For example, if you're reward driven, you can gatekeep things from yourself until, I'm not gonna allow myself this privilege or this privilege until I expand my confidence zone or do something random or do something uncomfortable. So just be aware of the rice analogy. And not only in yourself, this is extremely important for motivating people. Whether it's people on your team, if you're running a project, like I said, I was a manager of 28 engineers, and I knew single-handedly which person on my team identified which one of these things. And I would use them to my advantage to motivate them to do better. I would sometimes, the ideology, some guy's ideology might be he wants to have an insane impact on the company. He doesn't care how much he's paid. He doesn't care about his ego. He wants to feel like he's making a difference. So you have to feed into that ideology. You have to feed into whatever the system is that motivates the people on your team. So super important acronym. Now, let's talk about confidence. So practice makes perfect. That's everyone knows that saying. So I would say talk to everybody. I used to go skiing a lot. I mean, I broke my arm snowboarding a couple months ago, and I would deadass ride the ski lift all day and just try to get as many conversations as I can in the ski lift. And people don't like talking in the ski lift. So sometimes it would be pulling teeth, and sometimes I would learn some crazy fact, and you would be surprised the amount of private information people tell you when they think that they're never gonna see you again. So I heard about husbands cheating on their wives, just crazy stories. So I would say whether you're in an elevator or on a ski lift or sitting down at a bench next to somebody in the park, get your reps in and talk to everybody. Now, it's not just about talking, it's about tracking your analytics. So I don't think enough people, again, going back to self-awareness, keep in mind of when they are doing good or bad in a conversation. Just like you would make content and you look at your analytics and you figure out how long till somebody stopped watching my video. I think it's happening in real life. How long? Be mindful when you lose someone's attention. So if you're talking to somebody and you have any level of self-awareness, you kind of know when they zoned out. When they start saying, damn, that's crazy, 4 times, they probably aren't listening anymore. So I think in your own conversations, track your analytics, and when it's not all the time, this is excessive, but when you have an important conversation, let's say it's a job interview or you're pitching your company or you're trying to slide it on your crush, dissect your interactions after. Don't just throw it away and be oh, better luck next time. Actually think about what happened in that conversation. And this is weird, and sometimes, in this situation, I'm recording myself. So when you record yourself, watch it again. Listen to what you said. I think take advantage of your recorded audio to dissect your analytics. And I think overall, the most important thing in communication is being yourself. I am genuine, or I try to be as genuine and authentic no matter who I'm talking to. I could be talking to, I've had meetings with Elon Musk. I've had meetings with council members of cities and people that are all this important. I don't change the way I act. I talk to my fucking little sister the same way I talk to Balaji. I think I stay genuine and I stay authentic. The reason why I think that's so important is because people mirror you. And when your guard is down and when you're not playing a character, it doesn't take long for them to also fall into that. And their guard goes down and they stop playing a character and you have genuine connections. So I think it's just super important to always be yourself and remind yourself that like you are the most likable when you're authentic. It doesn't matter if you don't even like who you are sometimes. If you're just you, that's always going to win in the end versus playing some character, because you can't keep up a character for the long term. Now, I just said be authentic, but you also need to wear a translator cap sometimes. So what I mean by that is, before we get into the translator cap, super basic thing. But remember fucking people's names. I think I could probably name everyone in this room at this point because I use a trick. Everyone needs to make a trick. Like when you're kids, you remember songs and they're stuck in your head because you like, A, B, C, or whatever the hell the song is. You need to create a system to remember people's names. So like, I try to correlate it with something funny. And then I'm like, I don't tell them what it is because sometimes it's a jackass joke. But like, I make a joke to myself about their name and now it's stuck in my head. I think it's important to figure out a system to remember names. And then also, within the first 5 minutes of meeting somebody, like, use their name once or twice. So, Addie says something, I'm like, oh, thanks, nice to meet you, Addie. Or like, hey, Addie, can you pass me that? Like, you weirdly force yourself to say their name at least like 1 or 2 times. That always helps. Simple, but important. Now, going to the translator cap. You need to know your audience because in communication, I feel like I've seen a couple communication talks here. Everybody talks about like, what do you say? How do you structure your sentence? Like this and that. The most important thing in communication is not the speaker, it's the listener. Because if you don't know what they're listening for, it doesn't matter what you're saying. So the most important thing in communicating is listening. So if you just let somebody talk about themselves, they're gonna leave being like, man, that guy was awesome. It doesn't even matter if you said anything. So the key to communicating is first figure out like which translation mode you need to turn your hat to, because it's obvious when you think about talking to a grandma or like a little kid or like a Gen Z kid, but when you have like everybody in this room, like the way I communicate with Addie is gonna be different than Greg, is gonna be different than Abir, because I understand like I've listened to them talk enough to know this is kind of how Addie's brain works, this is kind of how Greg thinks, this is the best way to get my message across. And I think that's a very subtle thing sometimes, but it is very important in your communication. Yeah.
How would you contrast that with like being authentic and also?
Exactly. So that's why I put these slides back to back, because I went from being authentic to, wear a translator cap. Same thing is like, if you're bilingual and you're speaking Spanish and you're speaking English, you're speaking 2 different languages, but you're actually still being yourself. So it's like, what I mean by that is, if I'm talking like, I'm a white guy, but I'm from the hood in Alabama. I was like a minority growing up. If I'm back at home with my hood friends, I'm being myself, and like at the core, they're like, yeah, Nick's a fucking jokester. He's like funny, he's smart. Like they would be able to identify all of my key traits, but the way I'm communicating with them looks a bit different than the way I'm communicating with somebody here. So I think it's just like changing the language, not changing the underlying personality. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
I think that having your guards very low, especially in some cultures like mine, for example. I feel like every time I speak some stuff in English, my cousin cries me like, don't say that. It's too politically incorrect in some way, But for us, it's just with these people, it's not that we're racist, we're just used to getting jokes like that. Apparently other cultures are way too allergic to that.
Well, that's why you got to figure out. No, you can be genuine, but I think you gotta understand, like, this is the American crowd. Let me filter out those sort of, like, that side of my character, which is like, sarcastic and like punchy and like, those kind of jokes. You can still be that way, but you need to first listen, learn, and adapt to understand, okay, to the American crowd, what's their equivalent of me saying something that's like kind of non-PC? You can still toe the line. Just figure out where the line is first. Yeah. Oh, and then the last thing. I think everybody needs to prioritize relationships. Like, we're humans. What makes humans humans is that we're social animals. And I think a lot of people don't put relationships in the top 3 values that lead them through life. And I think if you don't do that, you're ultimately just going to be less happy and less fulfilled, because relationships are really what makes humans the top of the food chain. And I think if you don't prioritize that, you're missing out on a lot of value in life. So just to little tip. Now we'll get into consistency. So I'm sure everyone's seen this photo. I like to say consistency looks like nothing's happening till everything changes. It doesn't mean like a fucking routine. I mean, it's good, great, like go eat your breakfast, go to the gym, like that's very basic level of consistency. But consistency really just looks like somebody that's always moving forward, somebody that's not self-doubting their decisions. Like everything we just talked about with the confidence, picking a card and ignoring the rest, like that is consistency. Making sure that you're always moving forward, you're not waiting for something to come your way, and yeah, you're just progressing. I think opportunities find you when you're consistent. So this is going to go into what I think is my favorite analogy, which is standing in the hallway is where you don't want to be. And I think our generation, my generation, is stuck in the hallway a fuckload. And that's why there's high levels of anxiety and depression and all of these things. The reason why we're stuck in the hall is because we opened the door of what our parents took and we were like, oh, damn, there's nothing back here. So now we're in the hallway trying to figure out like, what door do we take? Now, going back, the reason why this is with consistency is because nobody knows which door is the best door to take. The point is, just don't stand in the hallway, because when you're standing in the hallway, that's when you get stress and anxiety and decision fatigue. So as you saw in the first slide, I just touched the tip of the iceberg. Like, I'm always doing random shit. I'm opening a door, I'm looking in, I'm closing, I'm running to the next door, I'm looking in, I'm closing, and sometimes I'll go in the room, I'll party there for a little bit, and I leave. I'm never in the hallway, because when you're in the hallway, it's just like stressful and anxious, and no one's going to tell you what door is the right door. And I think going through as many doors as you can and not worrying about finding the perfect one is really the path to fulfillment, because it's like everybody in this room probably feels either now or at some point in their life like, oh, I don't know what my purpose is. I really want to find a purpose. And like, I'm sad to tell you, there might be periods of your life where you feel like you have this purpose, like when you become a parent for the first time or when you like start your own company and it launches. But like, we will never lose this feeling of what's my purpose, no matter how old you get. I've talked to old people all the time, and it's just funny how true that sentiment is. The purpose is running through the fucking doors. Like, we're here just going through doors of life, and I think that is what motivates me. And yeah, I love this analogy. Kind of similar is like there's always a next step to make. So sometimes the reason why you're in the hallway is because you can't even see the door. The lights are out. Well, I think it's just like being in a forest. If you can't see the way out, you can always look down and see, like, at least I know where my next step is. So going through a door, always taking another step. And I'm not saying you commit and go through the door and jump in. Like, you can open the door and put your foot in, test something out, and say, no, I'm going to go to a different door. But just be grabbing the door handles and maximize everything. This will help with consistency. If you say yes to everything, you'll increase your randomness, you'll increase your confidence, you'll increase your consistency, and you'll most importantly expand your comfort zone. So I want to end by talking about some mindsets. Disclaimer, so I think I've mentioned this to a lot of people in this room, but I have a mental anomaly, I would say, that's called aphantasia. So it's described by the inability to visualize things. So basically, there's a spectrum. Some of you might be here, or even here, and some of you might be with me. I'm here. So I can't imagine what my mom's face looks like. I can't imagine what an apple looks like. I can't have any visuals in my head. So I say this to say a lot of my mindsets, I think, stem from this anomaly. So I think a lot of them are possibly difficult to impossible for somebody that thinks like this to have. But I encourage you to try, because I think it's a superpower in the sense that it allows me to live in the present all the time. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not stressing about the future. I'm not scared of an outcome because I'm not visualizing it. And I think that is the key to a lot of my success. So be more like aphantasia. Now, what does that look like? Well, these are kind of my three major breakdowns of mindsets. So I describe my lifestyle as strategic serendipity. So what I mean by that is, again, going back to the Plinko, I'm bouncing around and I figured out where I'm at in the Plinko board. I'm like, oh, fuck, my parents dropped me out here in the shittiest part of the Plinko board. So I'm aware I want to get over there, but you can't control it. Like, You're bouncing around life randomly. So that's the serendipity part. But strategically, I know I'm trying to nudge myself this way. So I'm doing everything I can to aim the randomness, but I'm accepting the things that are out of my control, and I'm using them to expand my comfort zone. Now, this is my favorite one. Don't dissect it too much because, mathematically it doesn't make sense. But generally, happiness is reality minus your expectations. If you remove your expectations, you're going to be happy with whatever life gives you. It's like the simplest exercise that I practiced was not watching movie trailers. Like, if you want to go see a movie, don't look at the movie trailer. Don't watch it. Just go watch the movie, because when you watch it, you're going to think like, at least whatever you saw was whatever it was. You're not going to compare it to what your thought on the movie was prior. So people go and see movies and like, that movie fucking sucked. No, it sucked because you thought it was going to be the best movie ever. So I think it's like doing small things in your life to minimize your expectations are key to increasing your happiness. Now, this isn't the same thing as like having expectations on yourself. Don't get that confused. This is expectations on the external world. I think you should hold yourself to a certain level and you can control those things. That's different. But when I'm talking about like, again, how is this movie going to go? When I came to this network school, I didn't know who biology was. I intentionally didn't watch any podcast, didn't read the network school. Literally just my buddy told me to come here and I just knew it was on an island. And I had zero expectations, and that's how I kind of make most of my decisions. I know that's a little bit unrealistic, but just practice this. Also, obviously, I think it's so important just to have fun because, again, most things are not in your control. And you need to enjoy the journey while staying aware and don't carry the unnecessary burden of all of the things that are not in your fucking control. So just have fun, because after this Super AI conference, I don't know how much longer we're going to be in control of our lives. So enjoy it while you can. All right, last slide here for mindsets. There's a hack to living longer. All right, it might be Brian Johnson. That might help. But to be honest, I feel like I'm 28 years old. I feel like I've lived 40 years at least, because novel experiences are the main things that you can do to slow down your perception of time. So like I said, if I'm in the hallway, every time I go in the door, it's a door I haven't seen before, my mind is tricking me and it's slowing down my perception of time. So that's why I bet you everybody in here, your first week at NS felt longer than a week. Because all of these novel experiences were entering your brain and your perception of time slowed down. So if you seek out novel experiences, which is expanding your comfort zone, when you're in your comfort zone, there's nothing novel there. That's why it's fucking comfortable. And a comfort zone is more addicting than drugs. That's why people sit on their couch all day. So not only are you expanding your comfort zone, you're also expanding your perception of life. So do novel things and you will live longer. My next favorite thing to do is I flirt with the rules. So I'm not saying like go out here and start breaking the law, but I think in general, there's a ton of rules and societal norms that do not make sense. So you need to build up trust in your judgment, obviously. This internal AI system, that's your gut feeling. Trust that and use it to break the rules a little, bend the rules, because if you don't break the rules, someone else is, and they're taking advantage of it. So don't break the law to some extent. Sometimes it's necessary to break the law, I'm not gonna lie, but in general, like, flirt with the rules. Don't just stay in the lane, because people who stay in your lane, they fall right down the Plinko board in the middle. So be selfish. Remember, your life is yours. You need to prioritize it. Don't be an asshole. Be selfish with grace, but you deserve to do what makes your life fulfilling. So what I mean by be selfish is don't just do something because maybe you want to impress your family or your friends, or you've convinced yourself that there's something that you have to do, but it's not fulfilling to you. Like, be selfish of your time, because it's only going away. And I don't think enough people spend time doing what they want to do, and it's kind of depressing. This is kind of funny, but I think it has legitimacy. I like to say, be like Spider-Man. I literally even have a Spider-Man tattoo because I live by this. I think with great power comes great responsibility, and this is important for the people in this room, because I think a lot of you are going to become really impactful people in the world. And power is money, it's knowledge, it's skills, it's self-awareness, it's everything I just said in this slide deck. That's power. And responsibility is staying compassionate, keeping your integrity, remembering that even though you have these superpowers, like you're just like everyone else. And there's not enough people being like Spider-Man, so I hope people in this room remember to, power and responsibility should grow together. So don't forget that as you guys become billionaires or whatever. Kind of going back to be selfish, I think it's important that you live life with urgency. Again, you only have one life, so don't wait for things to come your way. Yeah, that's it. There's really no wrong or right way to live your life. I'm not a guru. I just told you guys what I figured out in my life, and it seemed to work pretty well so far. So I only scratched the surface, really, with this presentation, but I wanted to give you guys, like, the foundational things. Don't hesitate to reach out if you're struggling about anything specific in your life. I would love to talk. So come spark a conversation with me. Thank you, and the shameless plug to follow me on Instagram. Any questions? Yeah, Lucas.
Where do you put in your life, or do you put any room in your life for like stillness, contemplation, removing yourself, or are you constantly engaging?
I think I overly do it. I think I'm constantly engaging and contemplating. And I think there's times where, again, being self-aware, there's times where I think I overanalyze and that it's not beneficial anymore because I'm like, when I find myself in this loop of like, oh, I just had that thought about that other thought and now it's not productive, then I stop self-contemplating. But I look for that kind of loop and then I'm like, okay, I went too far. But I think I kind of always analyze probably too much, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of things you said that they are tied to, a self-awareness of your character, and for a character is more like an engaging character, makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of people that agree with the word of self-awareness, they don't have like the same degree of confidence, not confidence, but like they are not themselves like doing stuff like that. They're really easily need maybe just disconnect or stay alone or something like this more constantly rather than just being all the time. And another thing that I want to ask is not regarding like the self-awareness, is about where do you put like sufferance, pain, and other experiences in this framework?
Soft what?
Sufferance. Suffering.
Suffering. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like, so you can, I psychoanalyze people a lot, and what I do is as I learn about what their experiences are, if there's a specific trait, like, so if I'm a VC looking to invest, or if I'm like a founder looking for a co-founder, there's certain traits that I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for somebody that's ambitious, somebody that's like a dog, somebody that's like whatever the fuck I define the person I'm looking for as, what I'm doing, to your point about how do I like track those things, I'm learning about these people's traumas. I'm learning about their experiences and how it's probably bounced them around. What min and max have they reached? Because they're going to be somewhere in the middle of those min and maxes. So if this person has like, if they're min, this is unfortunate, but this happens to people all the time. They have a trauma that brings them down to some really fucked up way to think about something. And unless somebody brings them up and shows them the opposite bright side, like that person's average character and that trait is just gonna be fucked. And I think that like you have to realize where these people's traumas have reached. And then you can also, if it's like, for me, if it's a partner, like if it's like somebody that I wanna be my wife, again, no one's fucking chart looks like this. Like this is an absolute perfect human being, right? Like no one's chart looks like this. So for me, if I'm looking for like my wife and I notice that, their mins are kind of down here, I will do my best to give them experiences that balance them out and bring them to more of a trait desire that I want. Now, again, this is very subjective because I intentionally didn't say like, feelings of money, cheap bastard, bawling out all the time. Like it can be like any spectrum of anything that you want to define, but I think knowing that this is generally how humans work, because basically we are human AI. I think, I didn't really talk about this, I forgot, but our brains work kind of similar to AI, where like as we go through life, we intake all of this data, and that data becomes our LLM, which is just your predictor. So this gut feeling, I have a really strong gut feeling because I've like intaked so much data on spectrums of things that I'm like, my gut feeling is like, I can predict this, I can predict this. But the part where you get into situations where you need a reasoning model, you need your brain to function, that's where, you're no longer going off your gut feeling. It's where you have a conversation with yourself. Like, is this really what I should do? Because I didn't think about this, I didn't think about this. So I think like enhancing your model comes from the more range that you have across the spectrum of personality traits. So traumas are good, but sometimes traumas can be so bad that your baseline is just not going to come back up, which is why like they say extremely successful people have the right amount of trauma. And that's because if you don't have trauma, you can't experience certain levels of the spectrum. And I think without experiencing those levels, you just miss out on certain data that builds your LLM. So yeah. Yes?
Where were you driving? It only took 25 hours across country.
Well, the trips have ranged from 20 to 38 hours. So usually I've driven from Alabama to San Francisco or Alabama to LA.
It's 200 miles per hour.
Yeah.
After 9/11, I used to drive from Florida to Pittsburgh. It would take me like 22 to 25 hours. I was like, I had 25 hours. That makes sense.
Yeah, the last one that I did earlier this year was from Denver to Huntsville, and it was 20 hours.
It was a great time for self-reflection.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, driving by yourself is the best time to develop self-awareness. So, yeah. Debbie.
So you just mentioned that the way that you remember people's names is you associate it with something funny. Can you give me an example of how you do it? So just use me as an example.
Well, yours is easy because you have the same name as my mom. So you're like, Debbie, I'm like, oh, that's my mom's name. It's stuck. Like, a beer, I'm like, oh, this guy looks like he drinks a lot of beer. So, like, I remembered his name. It's like cream, it looks like he put cream in your hair. So I'm like, oh, Kareem. So it's like, Addy, I'm like, this guy's got a lot of energy. He probably takes Adderall. Like, I think it's like Addy, like, I just remember things with, like, names like this. Yours is easy, so, yeah. Yeah.
I like this. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm going to start remembering everyone's name
Yeah,
now.
you don't have to share what your game is, but, it's fun. All right, Simon?
Yeah, you mentioned getting conversation reps in. Do you have strategies for actually making it engaging? Or
Yes.
just starting a conversation?
Yes, I think, is it on this slide? Ask questions. I think it's like what I've done before is it's best to like curate this yourself, but like literally you can just tell ChatGPT, if I'm in the elevator, it doesn't have to be in the elevator, it could be on a park bench, but it's like, if I'm in the elevator with somebody for 2 minutes, what is the best questions I can ask to give me the most, like, extract the most profound information from them? And then, like, ask questions because the less you speak, the more people find you likable. It's a weird correlation, but that's just how people interact. So yeah, I would just, and then kind of like use the questions that you ask to grow them over time. So like the more reps you have, you'll realize like, oh, that question usually doesn't give me anything good. So like I'm gonna drop it and replace it with something else. Yes, exactly. So.
What do you feel more, death or a handicap? Your extreme life.
I think if I got really handicapped, I would rather just be dead, to be honest. Yeah.
How far do you think you go close to that?
Oh, I mean,
12 times.
Yeah, I've had 3 times for sure when I was close to dying. One time I think I died and came back to life. Okay, this has nothing to do with this, but the one that was the most scary is I wasn't doing even anything that extreme, but I was tubing on a boat. You know, you like drag the tube behind the boat. And then the boat was running out of gas, and my friend was like really inexperienced, so he was stressed out. So he was like, oh shit, we're running out of gas. We're like, we need to get back. So the boat was running out of gas, and I was trying to swim and pull the tube back to the boat. Somehow the boat turned back on, and he was like, oh, now that I have gas, I need to go. So he turns it back on and he floors it, and I'm in the middle of the tube in the water and the boat, and the rope's all around me. So he takes off, it wraps around, completely ties me up, and I'm underwater getting dragged, and I can't like I'm just wrapped up in the rope between the tube behind me that's like causing the drag, and he's just gunning it on the boat, and I'm underwater, and I can't breathe. I can't wave or anything. And then I ended up passing out in the water. Luckily, he ran out of gas, so the boat stops, and then my buddy jumped in and like pulled me out. But I thought I was gonna die. Like I remember in the water being like, well, this is a shitty way to die, and then I just fucking and then I fell asleep. That was probably the scariest one. But yeah, man, I've been hit by a car. I've done like I thought I was gonna die doing this because there's no parachute, and this one was. I paid $1,000 to do this, and then I remembered, and then they make you pay before you go up. And then I remember right when I lifted myself out of the cockpit, I'm like, I might just take an L on that $1,000. But then the main motivator was I didn't want to waste my money, so then I did it anyway. So I value my life at about $1,000 apparently. But yeah, that one was pretty scary. This is the very first time I ever skydived. It was solo, and then I've done it a few other times and done bungee jumping. I've wrangled, this is a tiny alligator, but I've wrangled like bigger alligators, tiger sharks. I've swam with great white shark, but that was in a cage. Yeah, I don't know. This is in Rockingham Motor Speedway, if there's any like Formula One track people. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, Yasmin?
You said there was like a hallway kind of opening doors.
Yes.
Try to like stop yourself from overdoing it, like just keep jumping from experience to experience, trying to like find more exciting things. Like I feel like I do that, and then I just want to like keep upping it.
Yes. So I think the best advice, again, this is easier for me because I literally have this like inability to really like think too much about what's behind the other door. So I think you should use your emotions are just data for your brain. So I think like using that data to make your decisions of when you walk out of the room or when you go in the next is what you need to do. So like what I mean by that is like, yes, there's an infinite amount of doors to run through. So it's like, oh my God, like I want to go through all of them. But what you need to realize is when you walk in a room, like take in that room. So it's like, don't think about what's in the hallway. Now I'm in this room. There's no other doors. There's no doors in this room. There's just this room. So if you start feeling like there's so many other doors I want to go see, therefore let me leave. It should be, I don't really want to be here anymore. Let me go through another door. But if you want to be in the room, sometimes I've went into a room and I've accidentally stayed in there for like 3 years. And I'm like, oh, it's because I loved being in this room so much. It's like I've gotten, like, I get in relationships with, like, people. And when I get in relationships, I'm not thinking about, like, all these other things. I'm just, like, however long this relationship lasts, like, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about, like, what are the other doors. So I think, to your point, it's, like, try to combat the ideas that are entering your brain about what the other opportunities are. And just think about, like, how much am I enjoying the room that I'm in? And let that guide you to be like, okay, I want to leave or I don't. But like, be in the room when you're in the room, right? I think that's the key. That makes sense. Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Just one last one.
Yeah.
How far of less stimulation has network school been to you? Meaning all of these extreme stuff. It's such a chill place to be in.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you said that because this isn't all, everything in life is like a double-edged sword. So I think like what I've noticed in my life is that just like somebody that like smokes a lot of cigarettes and creates like a tolerance for nicotine, it's like I think my tolerance for excitement has been like so high that it is sometimes I get in situations where I'm just like, there isn't any level of excitement or doesn't seem to be, right? So the way that I resolve that is like in the network school, for example, it's like going back to this, like, sure, I'm not getting this reward here because of this reward of excitement and all these things. So what am I doing? I'm gamifying it to myself. I'm creating an exciting situation by setting goals. Like I don't share with anybody, but it's like, I'm going to go to the gym like 3 times a day and do all these things because like I'm trying to do something very crazy. Like even though in a non-crazy environment, what I'm trying to accomplish is like crazy. Like I'm running a marathon in like 3 weeks. Haven't done any training. It's like I create a crazy situation for myself, even though it doesn't supply it for me. So I think like here, there's things that I'm doing on my own that are kind of tied to this. But yeah, I think the sad part is sometimes you can become numb to things if you like fill your life with too much excitement. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we'll talk about how to pick up girls in Rizz 102. So. It was? Damn. Yeah, boys night. Thanks.